Seven's exclusive coverage of the National Touring Car Championship this weekend brings us to Surfers Paradise, Queensland, the sun and surf holiday capital of Australia. The Gold Coast has something to offer every Australian, no matter how young or old. Wall-to-wall skyscraper hotels, a truly magnificent shoreline, and for those who like a game of chance, this imposing new casino, hotel and convention centre is due for completion later this year. 9 kilometres west from the downtown area is Surfers Paradise International Raceway, a playground for those who like to live life in the fast lane. This 3.2 kilometre circuit is one of Australia's fastest and most open tracks. The complex also incorporates a drag strip and quarter-mile oval track, and if you happen to fly your own light aircraft, well, there's an 1,100-metre landing field at your disposal. Today's Gold Coast Bulletin Centenary Trophy marks the 7th round of the Australian Touring Car Championship. As always, the team cars to beat are the JPS BMWs, to be driven by series leader Jim Richards and Kiwi sidekick Neville Crichton. The Commodores will again be out in force with Peter Brock heading the entrance, plus the nimble Alphas of Alan Jones and Colin Bond, and then the Banana Republic's very own Dick Johnson. And then there is this man, New Zealander Robbie Francevic, and this car, the Mark Petch Turbo Volvo. Scene stealers from the last round of the title tilt at Keilor in Victoria. Rapid Rob might be a stranger in paradise, but as our touring car tyros are discovering, he is one quick learner. Surfers Paradise, both a tropical and topical venue for today's championship of the touring car greats.
Welcome again to our 7 Network coverage of the Touring Car Championship, round 7 here at Surfers Paradise. It's going to be a thriller. The day dawned a little overcast, and if the forecast of some late thunderstorms eventuate, well, it's going to be very exciting indeed. Jim Richards on pole position again. Alongside him on the front row of the grid, Peter Brock and Robbie Francevic. Now, Brock came out the second session of qualifying yesterday and blew Richards away, ripping a second and a half off his previous quickest time and looked like he was going to steal pole. And then, in a last desperate attempt, Richards came back and lowered his time by 0.8 of a second to regain the pole position. That's the sort of action you can expect to see here today in round 7 of the championship. We've got a whole host of other races to back up the program. It really will be an exciting one. In fact, they're getting ready to come out for the first event now.
Australian Touring Car Championship, of course, brings us to Surfers Paradise and to Queensland. The past 6 rounds have been dominated by a Victorian driver in Jim Richards, but once you cross the border for round 7, you're in Dick Johnson territory. For many years now, it's been a case of Dick Johnson, the battler, the Queensland loner who has surrounded himself with family and close friends to tackle the giants of the touring car business. Well, the times are a-changing for Johnson. His latest business venture is the Brisbane Engine Centre, located alongside Ross Palmer's tube mills at Acacia Ridge, 15 kilometres southwest of Brisbane. The imposing 27,000 square foot building specialises in racing and general engine preparation, research and development, and a soon-to-be incorporated special vehicles section similar to Peter Brock's Holden dealer team operation in Melbourne. When it comes to the final tuning of racing engines, Dick Johnson is the supreme boss. He operates the dynamometer, punishing the small block V8s in the search for another 10 or 20 horsepower. Whether behind the wheel of a Mustang or tweaking its tail on the workbench, it's all in a day's work for the likeable Queenslander.
At present, the thing is on the make now, which has been a long, hard road to get it that way. But fortunately for us and for the Ross, who has put more into it than anyone else, it's on the way up. So that's one thing to be pleased about, I suppose.
The association between Dick Johnson and Ross Palmer, if the two of you hadn't gotten together on a sponsorship deal in 1980, would Dick Johnson still be racing, still be as competitive today?
I'm damned if I know. In some form, I would have been racing for sure, because I started off in 1964, and I battled all the way through to 1980 before Ross came onto the scene.
The Brisbane Engine Centre, what does it represent in staff and man-hours and the site that you've got here and your projections for the future?
Well, we've got a lot of things in the pipeline that we'd like to do, and we're just waiting for confirmation from other parties involved. And once they're underway, well, hopefully the operation will turn into something a lot bigger than what it is now. There's about 13 or 14 people working here at present, and probably if things get underway the way we foresee them, there'll probably be about 30 or 40 people working here, which is enough people to pay every week. As long as you've got to make the dollars to pay them, though, haven't it?
With such an operation, then, is Dick Johnson a hard boss?
No, I think I'm too soft. I'll let somebody else do all that.
Oh, he's not too bad. You know, you just got to argue with him now and again, but he's pretty good.
Who wins all the arguments?
Well, you can do anything any way you like, as long as you do it his way.
Dick basically inside is too soft. Yeah.
Why?
Why? I suppose it's because he's spent so much time before he got to the stage where he is now doing everything himself. He's his own man. He wasn't in the position where he had to put the weights on anyone or load it up, so he probably finds it hard to do.
You've surrounded yourself with family in your racing career. I don't think anyone is more attached to their racing than perhaps your wife. It would have been a lot tougher to have done your racing without the involvement of your wife?
I think it's a very important part of the whole system because with her being involved in it and being away so much, and you take her with you, so obviously they have to accept it. And I think a lot of people's private life go down the drain because they don't involve their immediate family with them, and it sort of makes for difficult times later on. And I've never wanted that because I've really been pretty well straight down the line, and I really want to keep it that way.
I always thought Dick had that in him to get that far, but, you know, we thought, you know, it would never happen, but that's the way it sort of worked out, and you have to live with those things when it happens that way.
Do you enjoy the life, Jill?
Oh, Mike, I really do enjoy it. It becomes hectic sometimes, but, you know, we all have those sort of times, no matter what business you're in, I think.
Well, Dick Johnson's popularity is well known to the motor racing fraternity, but I wonder how well he's known to the average Queenslander. We decided we'd come to this mall and ask a few people at random.
Dick Johnson. Boxing?
Yeah, he's a racing car driver, isn't he?
I know him. He works down at Springwood. My girlfriend cuts his hair.
Racing car driver.
Do you know anything about him?
No.
You followed him?
No.
You're a Queenslander?
I am.
You should be ashamed of yourself.
I don't particularly like the man.
Oh, he drove Fords, and he's always drove Fords.
You go to all these races?
Up here, yes. Been to Bathurst 1977 last time, 1-2 Ford victory.
He's a motor racing driver.
A good one?
Yes.
Never heard of Dick Johnson?
What does he do?
No, I'm asking you that. Of all the sportsmen? No.
Cricket?
No.
Swimming?
No.
Can't think.
Car racing driver?
Oh, I knew that. I was just testing you.
Firstly, I can't make any comments while I'm on duty.
Oh, I see. That's a bit difficult. But is the name of Dick Johnson?
Yeah, racing.
Racing. Good driver?
Oh, the best.
All right. Well, I'm glad I didn't put you on the spot.
Yeah.
Helicopters?
No.
No.
Helicopters? Close.
Cars?
Correct.
Do I win something?
Well, there's only one Dick Johnson, that's for sure.
Welcome back to our telecast of the 7th round of the Australian Touring Car Championship from Surfers Paradise. Surfers, one of the fastest tracks in Australia. No one knows it better than Dick Johnson.
Thanks, Mike. This is Surfers International Raceway, the main straight, which is extremely long and goes into one of the fastest right-hand corners on any circuit in Australia. a little dab on the brake to settle the car, and full into the loud pedal all the way through, running right out to the edge of the circuit. Down to IPEC, which is a hard right-hand corner that continues a fairway. Now, this is where they resurface the track, and there's a few bumps here, so you've got to be very careful to place the car correctly. Down the back straight towards a very fast sweeping left-hand corner, which is a 4th gear corner, into 5th now, and back to 4th again, hard in the left, boot right into it, and run it right out to the edge of the ripple strip, and sometimes use a bit of it. Now, here we come down to Kelly Springfield corner, which is a 3rd gear corner, straight back to 3rd from 5th, turn right, and this is one corner that really fries the tyres up. Next one is a right-hander coming into the S's, and then a left, which is 2 corners, but you make 1 corner out of the 2. Left, and keep going left, still in 3rd gear, make a right-hander through this corner here, and there's one more corner to come onto the straight. Now, this corner is extremely important because your terminal speed down the straight depends immensely on how you come through that corner. And that's Surface International Raceway. So it's back to you, Neil.
There's the Surface Paradise circuit. This race is over 25 laps. Let's check the grid as they'll line up after the warm-up. Jim Richards on pole position, car 62 for the 4th time in the series, qualified in a 1:17 even in his BMW. Peter Brock also on the front row, 05, the Commodore, then Rob Francevic in car 21, the turbocharged Volvo. On the second line, Dick Johnson, car 17, the Mustang, and Alan Jones in 27, an Alfa Romeo. Then Neville Crichton, BMW, car 31, Larry Perkins in the second of the dealer team Commodores, car 7, and Kent Bagent in a BMW. Colin Bond in an Alfa, car 26, shares the next row with Steve Masterton, car 2, a Commodore. Then we've got Brian Sampson in 78, a Starion, Peter Williamson in 77, a Toyota Supra, and Ken Matthews in car 19, a Commodore. And completing the field in car 10, John Smith, a Toyota Corolla, car 20, Jim Keogh, a Commodore.
And as you can see, we have spectators galore here today. That looks like some that have been brought out from the local zoo, perhaps. They're all caged up for the occasion. I tell you what, I hope they've got plenty of brollies, because I can't see this race going full distance without the intervention of the rain. In fact, looking right over the back of the circuit on the mountains, some fine mist over there, so I think we're in for a slightly wet touring car round number 7 here at Surface.
Just rounding out that field, the other starters are in car 30, Russell Worthington, driving a Mazda. Car 13, Bob Holden in a Toyota Sprinter, 18, Ross Burbridge in a Starion, and the ever-present Mike Monier in car 36, a Volvo 360.
Well, there's the scene here, a very picturesque setting for the racetrack at Surface Paradise, mountains in the background, and of course the surf and everything else across the other side of town. A huge crowd in attendance for round 7, the Gold Coast Bulletin Centenary Australian Touring Car Championship. The start will be critical for Jim Richards, obviously. They have a 2-lap warm-up, and of course all of you who followed the touring car title tilt from Keilor and Victoria saw Jimmy Richards for the 2nd or 3rd consecutive round get away very, very slowly off the start. Paid the penalty because he had to fight his way back through the pack. A good start here will be taking a lot of pressure off Jim Richards. But if Robbie Francevic or Peter Brock get away smartly and Johnson goes with them, it's going to be a hard race ahead for Jimmy Richards.
Richards qualified yesterday, Mike, on the absolute softest tyre that he could get, which put him 0.3 quicker than Peter Brock, whilst Brock opted for what you'd have to call, I guess, a middle compound. Considering Richards hasn't been starting too well and Brock is, of course, very quick off the line, it's probably fair to say that we may well see the V8s get in front early on. But I noticed when I was down there just a few moments ago that Richards has opted for a fairly hard compound for the race. So rather than looking for a sprint performance in the first few laps, I would suggest that he's looking forward to being at the right end of the field at the end of the race.
Well, it's been a little bit of a trait, hasn't it, with Jim Richards? He's been a little bit slow to get moving in some of the races, content to let 2 or 3 cars pull out in front of him for a couple of laps and then really get to work and chew away at their rear end. and work his way through the field and finally take the checkered flag. It's worked well for him so far.
Tell me, Neil, when you were in the pits a few moments ago, many of the crews starting to get the wet weather tyres out?
They've got them all on standby down there. We were actually in the dummy grid area, whereas the tyres and all of the pit gear was a little bit further along, but they're all frantically mounting tyres down there at the moment. They're putting them into the bays. There's Jim Keogh in car 20 with some ominous-looking black smoke coming out from underneath the back of the car. Well, there's a little curl of blue smoke there as well, so that's not good for poor old Jim.
He's had a frustrating run. There he goes up the inside. I think the race might well be over for Jim Keogh before he starts, suggesting to one of the mechanics to come over the rail and have a chat to him. I think the mechanic might suggest to Jim that, unless it's a minor problem that we can't detect, there's a case of internal hemorrhaging about ready to take place.
You notice one of the officials there just checking underneath to make sure that he's not actually dropping oil on the circuit. That's the thing that officials and other drivers are most worried about.
Says Brocky, 0-5, moving up middle of the front row. He'll split that with pole sitter Jim Richards and the Kiwi, Robbie Francevic on the outside.
I'll tell you what might be interesting there, Mike, is just exactly what Brock has opted for in terms of rubber. I didn't have a look at that before. They've been fiddling around quite incredibly over the course of the weekend, changing and chopping. I understand from this morning's warm-up. Oh, yes, here we go. Yes, well, in fact, he's gone for the D3 Pirelli tyre, which is the hardest compound there. So Brock, like Jim Richards, has gone for a tyre that'll take him through to the end of the race and put him in good stead. Dick Johnson has also changed rubber. He's on Avon after qualifying yesterday using a combination of Dunlop and Avon. More interestingly, some of the teams are in actual fact mixing up their compounds of tyres, so that, for example, the tyre that works hard, like the back left, they're going for a very hard compound, like, for example, Francevic, who's gone for a super hard Dunlop on the back left.
Yes, he's not going to get caught with a soft tyre and have it go off, as he found last week, or the last round rather, at Keilor in Victoria.
30 seconds. And they'll be away in round 7, the Touring Car Championship for 1985.
The starter, you can see, top of screen, will wait for the flag to come up. The Gold Coast Bulletin Centenary Australian Touring Car Championship, round 7 from Surfers Paradise International Raceway. Promises to be one heck of a race. Stand by. Flag is up. They're racing, and it's Brock getting away smartly. Yes, he is, and Jones has made a blinder. Watch him try and separate them. Richards goes for a gear as Brock tries to squeeze across. Johnson tries to open the pair of them up as they go under the bridge for the first time, and it's Brock on the outside and Robbie Francevic coming on strongly. Dick Johnson is back to 4th, and Brock trying to race Richards down to IPEC corner.
Brock on the outside, but Richards has the line. Richards holds him out going through down the back the first time. My gee, what a great start. And a great start for Jim Richards for once.
A terrific start for Richards, although at one stage it appeared as though Brock might have the best of him. Down to the left-hander, Richards, Brock, Francevic is the order. Dick Johnson is the next one. And they were then followed, Neville Crichton making a good move as well, is up behind them, and then Alan Jones.
Jones looked like he was going to charge between them, as did Dick Johnson going into the first corner, but got muscled out by both Jim Richards and Peter Brock. Interesting to see on the main straight the first time, just whether or not in these cooler conditions now, whether Francevic can get that little turbo in the Volvo wound up and reel in the leading pair.
Coming through back onto the start-finishing straight here at Surfers, and with one lap completed now in round 7, Jimmy Richards, the pole sitter, leads down the front straight. Peter Brock running in second. Third is Francevic. 4th Johnson. 5th Crichton. 6th is Jones. Masterton, then followed by Larry Perkins, Peter Williamson, Colin Bond, then Jim Keogh and Brian Sampson.
Well, the big improver of the bunch there was Steve Masterton, who qualified back in 10th position and has come up in front of Larry Perkins, so that's a good performance from him.
The straight line speed was...
What's Jim doing out on the
road?
Maybe opting for a very hard compound tyre, and he can't get enough heat into it early. But if he's not getting enough in, Peter Brock's got similar problems because he's managing to just edge away a little bit from Peter Brock.
But they're both on the same tyre too.
And of course Robbie Francevic is back in 3rd.
Yes, memories of Keilor, I think, for Peter Brock when he looks in the rearview mirror and sees Robbie Francevic right there again.
The other thing that favours the turbo at the moment, with the temperature continuing to drop, the cooler and the lower closer to sea level, in fact, the better off you are with a turbo. So Francevic at the moment would really have some horsepower being churned out of this car.
He's starting to get edgy about wanting to go on with this. We'll watch them next time up the front straight. As Peter Brock trying to defend second place, has Robbie Francevic behind him, but Brock is very fast off that turn. And now Francevic has his opportunity as they come storming up the straight. Mightn't be close enough this time. Sitting right in behind Brock. Unless he's going to make his move. Brock moves across the racetrack. Oh, yes, sirree. They are playing for keeps.
Brock driving by the mirrors at the moment. Look at the tail of the Commodore just starting to slide away as he went through IPEC.
He's going to give his tyres a pound if he intends doing that against Francevic for the next 23 laps.
Well, Robbie should come on pretty strong because these tyres should, in theory, be good for at least the first 15 or so laps. It just remains to be seen just exactly how he cuts up the back left towards the latter part.
Dick Johnson closing up 2 now on Brock and Francevic, and Crichton right on his tail. Then Alan Jones and Steve Masterton. A real race, though, for second place at the moment between Brock and Francevic. A lot of words have been traded. And here's the view from Dick Johnson holding down 4th spot. Richards up ahead, you can see, just disappearing around the corner. And then Brock, then Francevic, briefly on the brakes.
Well, Johnson might lose out in the draft if Francevic can pick up Brock coming out of this next corner back onto the straight. Johnson's pretty close to Francevic, though. Brock is very quick out of this turn. Now, this is where Francevic should be able to make his run. Sitting in behind them, Johnson and Neville Crichton just behind Johnson.
What Dick really needs here is the advantage of the toe from either Brock or Francevic. I think he might have just pulled this one off. No, he hasn't. Because the way the Mustang handles down through this part of the course is absolutely superb. So if Johnson can just get some more advantage out of that draft, then he could be really into this.
Well, if Francevic can open the gap on Brock, you're right. Maybe they can take Jones along, take Johnson along for the ride. Neville Crichton sitting back behind Johnson's Mustang as they come down towards the left-hander again. And Francevic closes here, slips to the inside. Brock has him covered. I'll tell you what, Brock is going to know he's been in a touring car race if he's going to do the art of self-defense here. But Francevic winds up the turbo, coming up to a right-hander, and Robbie says, thank you. We'll have half a yard of that. Takes it. Now Francevic moves into second. Brock is third, and we'll wait and see whether Francevic can now start to pull in the race leader, Jim Richards.
Well, can Francevic protect second place from Brock on the main straight when they come back again? And look at Johnson right on Brock's tail. Listen to the crowd roar. Yes. By gee.
The rather partisan local crowd for Dick Johnson. They come through back onto the start-finishing straight, and here is Johnson now honing in on the tail of the Mobile Commodore. We'll see whether or not Francevic loses Brock up the straightaway. Yes, he probably gains maybe 10 metres that time. So theoretically, he might be able to haul in Jim Richards if he has some clean air there for a while. Hardest part of the racetrack for Robbie Francevic under the bridge.
Richards, meantime, is about 80 metres ahead of Francevic. Francevic in second place, remember. Brock in third, Johnson fourth. You just saw Jim Richards go through in the black BMW.
Francevic now is managing to break the draft behind him, so Peter Brock will start to struggle a little bit here in terms of keeping touch with Francevic. So Francevic with the opportunity now to do something about the flying black BM, and of course the crowd here all charged up to see Johnson do well. He was the winner at this round last year.
Neville Crichton still in fifth place, followed by Alan Jones in the first of the Alphas in sixth. Seventh place being held down by Steve Masterton in the Commodore number 2. But Jim Richards, the race leader, and doing it well. 62, Jim Richards, BMW, leading from 21, Francevic in the Volvo, and 05, Peter Brock in the Commodore, holding down third place. 7 laps out of 25, round 7 of the Touring Car Championship here at Surfers Paradise. We're watching the second and the third and fourth placed cars, Peter Brock and Dick Johnson. Jim Richards continues to lead the race quite clearly from this man, Robbie Francevic, just going off the edge of our screen. But the big scrap is between Brock and Johnson. You want to have a look at it from Dick Johnson's viewpoint? We'll do that through courtesy of Race Cam. And there it is. You watch the brakes come on as they come down to this corner with Peter Brock. Standing out like beacons, too, in the very dark conditions here at Surfers with the rain so far. Oh, very close. Did he get there, Dick Johnson? The rain so far holding off.
Brock's Commodore tending to be a little skatey the last couple of times through IPEC. Runs away from Johnson's Mustang down the short straight to the run to the left-hander. But watch how Johnson closes up again down through this section of the circuit. Francevic has broken their draft. He's now hot after Jim Richards, and Brock is trying to protect third from Dick Johnson. And behind Johnson, of course, Neville Crichton.
The gap between Richards and Francevic at the moment, 2.98 seconds, and from second to third, that is Francevic to Brock, 1.8 seconds. And the rain, we understand, is now coming down.
Yes.
There it is on the screen of the Mustang. So that will throw this race into total disarray if it really buckets, and I can tell you what I think it's going to.
Certainly going to close everyone up in a hurry. So Dick Johnson tailing Peter Brock. You can see the raindrops. Umbrellas up everywhere.
This is where it's going to get very tricky if the rain starts to come down. There's enormously fast sweeping right-hand turn out from under the bridge. Mike Minear wisely sticking to the edge of the track and letting the faster cars go through there.
And the first car into the pit area, Colin Bond. He's already in, sitting there, just waiting to see if he has a problem, whether he's come in for a change of tyres. I would think, I mean, something more than that to have skated off so quickly.
He came in just prior to the rain, Mike, so I don't think it was just simply for a change of rubber. Incidentally, they were a fair way off with pace whilst the track was still dry. I had Richards there before at a 1:19.7, which is 2.7 seconds slower than his qualifying time, which is understandable, of course, considering the tyre difference. But by gee, they're still not really lapping as quickly as everybody would have thought.
Bond gets underway, first one in, and he's back out. There's Brock, 0.5. It's sprinkling, but it hasn't started to come down in buckets, but it certainly looks like it's going to do just that. Once again, on to the starting straight. Dick Johnson a little further back that time, behind Peter Brock. And there's Robbie Francevic just ahead of them, trying to get a windscreen wiper to give it a dab.
Gap between Richards and Francevic now out to 3.6 seconds. He's opening it. We've been blessed so far in the Touring Car Championship with plenty of sunshine and no threat of rain. So this is going to be very interesting if it does actually get wet, although just as we spoke it, it's just backed off again for a little while, but it does look pretty bad towards the west at the moment.
Johnson giving the Mustang a couple of extra dabs of the brake. Got the wiper going. As Neil mentioned, no problem at this stage for Jim Richards in the 62 BMW. Still leading comfortably from Robbie Francevic in the Volvo Turbo 240. Then Peter Brock, and back behind Brock is Dick Johnson in 17.
What is happening, Mike, is Brock is closing the gap just a little now to just under 1.5 seconds between himself and Francevic, so he might be in a better situation with more rubber on the road than Francevic of being able to close that gap.
Yes, handling has been, oh yes, now look, you can see the rain becoming a little steadier. Oddly enough, it's not quite as heavy down this part of the course on the main straightaway as it is over the back. It is a big circuit, 3.2 Ks. On lap 10, 15 remaining. A long way to go yet. The weather could do anything.
It's not slowing them up too much at the moment, Gary. You saw the board out there for Dick Johnson at 1:20.74. But it would be very, very skaty.
Well, I would expect we'll see Peter Brock gaining in the next couple of laps on Robbie Francevic. Francevic having some problems yesterday with the handling of the Volvo beneath the bridge. Not getting enough rubber down on the ground, and of course with it raining lightly, it's not going to make life any easier for the Kiwi.
As Brock is catching up on Francevic, he's certainly clearing away now from Dick Johnson. So the top four beginning to spread themselves out. The race leader at this stage continues to be Jim Richards. In second place, Robbie Francevic, and in third spot, Peter Brock.
Back at Surfers Paradise International Raceway, and round 7 of the Touring Car Championship continues with Jim Richards up front in car number 62. This man still holding down second. That's Robbie Francevic in the Turbo Volvo 240. And back behind him is Peter Brock in car number 05. Brock getting a little bit close, and the rain, as you can see, off the mountains, starting to head towards the racetrack here.
Gap from first to second, Mike, is now 4 seconds. That is between Richards and Francevic. So Richards managing to maintain the gap, which is very important for him. Alan Jones, incidentally, up and in front of Neville Crichton now.
Well, that's interesting, because a lot of the crews have been starting to wheel out the wet weather tyres. They obviously don't believe this race can go the full distance.
The gap between Francevic and Brock now 2 seconds. So that continues to seesaw. And the second last time through, Brock came through with the right-hand indicator on. Now, the drivers have all sorts of little codes worked out with their pits. They'll flash lights and they'll flash indicators and so forth. So it'll be very interesting to see whether or not Brock uses intermediates as the track continues to get wetter.
And Alan Jones is not the only man to have got by Neville Crichton. Larry Perkins in the second of the Mobile Dealer Team cars has also done that. So that moves Larry Perkins up into 6th place. It's Richards, Francevic, Brock, Johnson, Alan Jones, and then the second of the Dealer Team cars with Larry Perkins at the wheel.
Well, I tell you what, it would have been an awfully long time since Alan Jones has driven in the wet.
Well, there's the gap back to Colin Bond, who's already been in the pits, rejoined the field, and trying to make up for lost time.
Peter Williamson has come into the pit lane. He had problems before and took a dive off the circuit very early in the race.
Because he drifted into the pits very slowly too, so I don't think he'll be going back out in a hurry from the look of things.
Francevic opening up the gap. There's Williamson on car number 77. Francevic now out to 2.2 seconds from Peter Brock. This is the gap for second to third. Perkins clear now of Alan Jones at the end of the main straight as they head down towards Dunlop, and he's broken clear by around about 3 or 4 car lengths. So Perkins really has the drop on them. There they are.
But Crichton in car number 31, trying to stay in touch. Actually made a very, very good start to the race, did Neville Crichton. However, was gathered in by Alan Jones in number 27, and as Gary mentioned only a few moments ago, Larry Perkins starting to come into his own in the second of the Mobile Commodores, number 7. To the left-hander. And Crichton, not the best starter. We've only seen him make probably one good one, and that was at Adelaide. But a good one here today, but he's feeling the effects of the charge by Perkins at this stage of the event.
The great thing about Neville Crichton is his consistency. He's managed to score in each of the previous 6 rounds so far, with a second, a fifth, a third, 2 fourths and a third placing. And although perhaps not yet a race winner, by gee, he can notch up those points, and of course lies second in the championship with 112 points, chasing his teammate Jim Richards.
Also chasing Alan Jones and Larry Perkins. And the wipers continue. The rain has not really got any heavier, but at the back of the circuit, it continues that fine drizzle, and a few pools of water starting to form on the track surface. As Crichton pulls out and has a go at Jones as they come down to the bridge and gets by him.
So Crichton moving once again up behind Larry Perkins. Jones could come for an inside run here under brakes as they head down to the right-hander with IPEC. Lap 15 of 25 in the Gold Coast Bulletin Australian Touring Car Championship. And it must be a sort of puzzling race for Dick Johnson, who we join now with race cam at his home track. Dick, how are things going?
Not too good, Mike.
What seems to be the biggest problem?
Well, apparently the tyres that I've put on, for some reason, don't like a little bit of water on the track. And I don't think I can get them on enough, to be quite honest.
Yes, well,
it's not too bad when it's dry, but when it's wet, she's not real good.
The biggest problem now would be not knowing what to do, whether it's actually going to drop in buckets or just stay with this fine rain through until the end of the event.
Well, I don't really know, Mike, but having a look out here, I don't think it's going to really affect things that much. I think there's only about 10 laps left anyway.
Dick, are they the experimental tyres that you were talking about yesterday?
Yes, they were, Mike. They were good in the wet, but they're not too good in the dry. And they were good in the dry, sorry, but not too good in the wet.
Dick, what about the track conditions otherwise? I mean, I know it's difficult now that this fine rain has started to fall, but this circuit normally, because it generates such speed, is pretty hard on tyres, isn't it?
Well, normally it is, and that's the saving grace that I think the Volvo and Brocker got at the moment. It never rains, but it pours, and it always pours their way.
Dick, just noticed a couple of moments ago you pumped the brakes a little down the back straight. What was that in aid of?
Oh, that's just a security pump, mate, more than anything else.
Just to make sure they're still there.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Does it become more difficult to drive the car in the wet, a more physically difficult task, Dick?
Well, this is a pretty physical sort of a circuit. And when you get changing patterns in the racetrack, like you do here, because like down the straight here, it's not too bad. And then you come to under the bridge and it's wet, and around the back it's a little bit dry. So there's a big variation in conditions.
I've got some bad news for you, Dick. Larry Perkins closing up at the moment at a rate of about 1 second a lap.
Well, I better get my finger out, eh?
Yep, we'll let you get back to it. Thanks very much.
Thanks, pal.
So Dick Johnson with some work to do, hey?
Well, Larry Perkins being the mover so far in the race, having his first run in the ATCC here at Surfers in the dealer team's second Commodore, and doing it very, very comfortably coming from behind. However, the man they still all have to beat is Jim Richards of New Zealand, comfortably out in front. Let's recap the placings. The leader, Jim Richards, second place being held down by Rob Francevic, and third, of course, is Peter Brock.
Out of 6 so far. Can he carry on and do it again today? No reason to suggest so far that he won't, because he's held the opposition quite comfortably at bay after winning the tussle with Peter Brock through the first corner. It's been all Jim Richards since then. The chopping and changing for position has all been going on behind him, and he's had a clear run.
The gaps at the moment, Gary, first to second, that's Richards to Francevic, 3.2 seconds. From second to third, Francevic back to Brock, 3.9. The interesting one, Brock to Johnson, 14.2 seconds.
Wow.
But fourth to fifth, which is a real beauty, is only 2.02 seconds.
So Richards is not really getting that much further away from Francevic, is he? He's only been able to pull that out about 2/3 of a second in the last 6 laps. That's not too bad. So Francevic's car really is holding up very well, particularly under these damp conditions.
Yeah, and considering that the tyres on the car are just so narrow, he must be doing a fair old job of steering it at the moment. But the guy who's really putting some pressure on is Larry Perkins, as we mentioned just prior to the break. Closed that gap between himself and Johnson, just 2 seconds, and he's got Crichton right behind. But have a look here at number 62, Jim Richards, the man they call Webfoot Richards. He really can manhandle a car in greasy conditions.
The conditions anything but ideal. As Dick Johnson noted, part of the track is wet, and then of course dry in another area. It doesn't look like all that rain is going to come down before the end of this race. We take our second race cam, and we are following Steve Marston.
Yeah, Steve made an early charge just before the rain actually.
Got right up behind Perkins.
Yeah,
as soon as the rain came down, he disappeared backwards. Qualified in 10th position. It was a pretty lowly qualifying time too, Gary, of 1:20.4, so that was some 3 seconds plus slower than Jim Richards.
Well, because Marston made the big switch from Falcon to Commodore this season in the Group A category, and he's only had a couple of starts up to now, and they're still working overtime, actually, trying to get this car sorted.
I think that's the difficult thing. They've really been shaking their heads on different occasions. Look at this dice here between Crichton and Larry Perkins in car number 7. This is the old Peter Brock car, which was formerly 05. And Neville Crichton, who lies second in the championship, tucked right in behind. This is the first drive for Perkins since the James Hardy 1000 last year. And, in fact, this is becoming a great little battle because we've got Johnson in the bunch, but in fact quite a few laps behind is Colin Bond with car number 26, then Larry Perkins, then followed by Neville Crichton.
They're certainly gaining on Dick Johnson. Perkins trying to make a lunge at Johnson's green Mustang, but at the same time trying to keep Neville Crichton at bay.
Well, let's see what happens here with just a little bit of slower traffic, whether Johnson can take advantage of that. Perkins now gets by.
Bob Holden does a great job and gets out of the way.
Colin Bond as well realises that he's outgunned. No way through there for Crichton. He has to back off momentarily and let Perkins take the line through the corner. And they continue slowly but surely to reel in Dick Johnson.
Coming up this time with about 3 laps to go. So Perkins is really gaining, of course, on Dick Johnson.
I tell you who else has really closed the gap. Francevic now just less than 2 seconds behind Richards. So he's cut that gap in half.
Well, are there enough laps left?
Well, this is the opportunity now for Neville Crichton to make the run at Larry Perkins if he can at the end of the straight. He's been pulling out of the draft as they headed towards the bridge. Johnson just ahead of them. No, couldn't do it. So that great scrap continues.
It's been one great scrap after another so far in the Australian Touring Car Championship. The first 6 rounds, very, very competitive. And, of course, Jim Richards set to continue his tradition here with pole positions and wins from those pole positions. Perkins working overtime to keep out Crichton. The charge to the back of Dick Johnson's car seems to have slowed up just a little. Look at the way that the Commodore is dicing around on this slippery surface. Have a look here, though, at Robbie Francevic. Car number 21 has been doing a great job in closing that gap between himself and the leader. The last time through, I got him at 1.98 seconds. Got the clock on him again. It's now 1.89. 2 laps remaining. Well, this is a great charge, isn't it, Mike?
It is from Francevic. He may have driven a very, very well-timed race here. The car doesn't like that run under the bridge. Absolute flat strap. The conditions suiting the turbo Volvo here today at Surfers.
It's been a while between drinks for Francevic. It was a 7th at Calder in the last round. It didn't finish result in Adelaide. A 9th at Wanneroo, and of course he was the winner down at Symmons Plains. So he would love to get back into the winner's circle this weekend.
Would certainly help.
And so too, I'm sure, with many of his fans. In fact, a funny story yesterday, a fellow from Australia who spent some time in New Zealand has lobbed up to Robbie and Mark Petch, the car owner, in the pits yesterday, and to help their racing effort has walked up and presented $1,000 in cash and said, go and buy some new tyres and try and get yourself pole position.
Well, he tried to do that, but it didn't work out really for him that well. However, in the closing stages now with about 1.25 laps still to run, oops, and getting sideways that time, that would have shaved a little more time off. Yes, the Volvo is getting a little unsteady in the wet through that corner. So that has cost Robbie Francevic dearly, make no doubt about it.
Yeah, well, he's dropped back now to 2.1 seconds.
We're coming up to take the last lap signal. Jimmy Richards in the JPS BMW 62 leads across the strike from Robbie Francevic in car number 21. All looking good for the Kiwi at this stage. Back behind them, Peter Brock in the 05 car. And then, of course, Dick Johnson, Neville Crichton, Larry Perkins all together in one bunch. And that still continues. But down the back part of the course for the final time, the Rainmaster, and he really didn't have to put up with too much in the rain today, closing up on Steve Masterton in the Commodore coming down towards the right-hander.
And Neville Crichton has got Larry Perkins back once again, as now Jim Richards goes around the outside of car 2, Steve Masterton, and that's probably just about sealed it for him, putting the car between them.
Coming
great performance.
Yes, he's going to be a hard man to beat for the touring car title. The man with the black BMW 62, headlights flaring, will come down to the bottom part of the course. And as they come through this last corner, crowd already starting to erupt as Jimmy Richards comes out of the last turn up the finishing straight here at Surfers Paradise International Raceway. Headlights flaring, and Jimmy Richards ready to greet the checkered flag. He takes round number 7 here today. Finishing in second is Robbie Francevic of New Zealand in car number 21, the Mark Petch Turbo Volvo 240. And back in third will be Peter Brock in car number 05. Fourth still to be resolved. And here it is. Last corner comes up, running in fourth is Johnson, and making a lunge at him is Neville Crichton. Crichton pulling out of the draft, trying to pass him. Crowd coming alive here. And now Johnson's trying to break the draft, and Crichton goes with him, but Johnson pulls the fourth. Local crowd thinks that is absolutely terrific. Well, a good finish to the 7th round of the touring car title. And a great win to Jim Richards.
And the gap was just 1.8 seconds between first and second there at the end of 25 laps. Let's recap the placings. The winner, Jim Richards, in car number 62. Second, Robbie Francevic in 21. And a great third placing to Peter Brock in 05.
Just could afford to smile, Jim.
Yes, it was very good. It was a hard race. There was not much between the first few cars, and then you certainly had to keep busy keeping Robbie back.
This will make you smile. Oh, holy smoke.
I could do some winning more often for that, couldn't I?
Listen, it was an awkward race, although you were highballing it out in front, but it couldn't make up its mind whether it was going to rain or not.
No, well, it wasn't really very wet. It was a bit slippery under the Dunlop Bridge. But other than that, the dry line on the track was still quite dry, and it just really looked more like it was wet than it actually was, and just had to keep trying.
I guess, looking back now, you're very thankful that you kept your foot firmly into the wall and held Brocky out through that first corner.
Well, that was a pretty important one for us, because had anyone got in front, it would have made it a lot harder for me to sort of keep going. Robbie was getting closer all the time, and that break is what won me the race.
There were not a lot of dramatic incidents in the race, and under these circumstances, I think that was probably a bit fortunate, because the conditions were becoming quite difficult.
Yes, but they weren't that bad driving. I mean, the tyres were hot, they were still sticky, and the road where you were driving wasn't that damp.
Were you easing back a little towards the end, because Robbie Francevic was closing on you pretty quick?
Yes, well, I knew that I had a good break on him, and like 3 seconds is enough for sort of 10 laps.
Yeah.
Because you're both lapping at pretty well the same speed. So I was making sure I wasn't going to make any mistakes.
Another big one. Congratulations.
Thank you very much, Gary.
Jim Richards, winner of today's round of the Touring Car Championship here at Surfers Paradise. Robbie Francevic, though, you were starting to haul him in. It was a long, hard race under difficult conditions. Any excuses? How can I say that to a man who's just manhandled that car around here and run second?
Well, you know, after Calder, I wasn't going to make the same mistake twice, so I thought I'll take it easy for 15 laps so that I don't destroy the tyres.
You were taking it easy.
But as it turned out, I could have gone right from the word go. And, of course, I worked the tyres hard to get past Peter, and then Peter let me go, and then I thought I'll let the tyres cool down, and, of course, no way. When I had to run, it was too late.
Yeah, oh, bad luck. But I think it just goes to show that on the bigger and wider stretches with the turbo and the cooler conditions, I guess, played right into your hands.
Yeah, but that BMW's got a lot of horsepower. I like to look under the bonnet.
Is that right? Well, feel free. You go for your life while I have a talk to Peter.
I grab my standards.
You have a talk. You have a look under the bonnet. I'll talk to Peter Brock. Deja vu. When you look in the rearview mirror there and saw Francevic early on, I bet you thought, gee, I got to get the hell out of here.
Yeah, it's this Hillman Hunter with railway sleevers each end. Well, true enough, but my car just has been sort of not quite right at the circuit all weekend. I had to manhandle the whole thing around there myself, actually, in the wet. It was one of the trickiest rides I've ever had in a motor car in my life, I think. It was very, very twitchy.
I'll tell you, one car that was going right, and a driver that was going right, that was Larry. He was really motoring home.
Well, sure. I don't know how far behind me he was, but, you know, he was...
Yeah, I mean, he was, Dick and Neville Crichton weren't that far behind you, and he was right on their hammer, so...
Well, I was 15 seconds ahead of Dick, or 18 seconds ahead of Dick, so probably Larry was within 20 seconds. It's not bad.
But you still got to come to grips with this little black machine.
Yeah, I thought we'd be better at this circuit, being a fast, swoopy sort of circuit, but in fact, we found that we had to do a lot more homework. We didn't have sufficient time. You know, that's no excuse. I mean, that's our problem. But come August, with some revisions and a car that's suitable to the rules and regulations, I'm sure you'll see a different performance from the Commodore.
It didn't really get that wet, but if you had a choice again before you went out, would you have put different tyres on?
No, I would have stuck with those tyres. I think they were probably the best I could have done under the circumstances. I just made the best of a sort of a tricky day, you know, a car that wasn't nice to drive, wasn't smooth to drive, and a track that was a little bit treacherous. But I felt good driving. I mean, I felt very happy. I was a bit disappointed to see the flag come out, actually. I was, you know,
just
really,
getting into it.
Yeah, I really was, yeah.
Keep hounding away, Pete.
Yep.
Okay, the under 2 litre class winner, again, is John Smith. Getting around out there, these big blokes tend to zoom past you pretty quick, John, but I guess you can't do any more than keep winning your class and keep piling up the points in the series.
Yeah, that's right, Gary. Actually, we're a lot closer to the bigger car this weekend than we have been all series, I think. They lapped us once, I think, in the race. Previous circuits, they've lapped us twice.
Yeah.
but I think it's also a tribute to the car. It's been such a good little car.
I found that a little curious, not only about yourself, but about the 2.5 litre Alpha, for argument's sake. On this circuit with the big straights and the big stretches, we thought the bigger cars would blow you away, and yet the smaller cars have performed very well.
Well, I think it's once a car gets to its terminal speed, its top end, there's not a real lot of difference in them. You know, our little car is only slow to accelerate out of a slow corner, where you've got fast sweepers like we've got at Surfers. Our little car, I think it's as quick as anything under the bridge. It's as quick as anything around the back of the circuit. It only misses out of slow corners.
OK, Smithy, good to talk to you.
Thanks,
See you next time again. That's John Smith, under 2 litre winner in today's round of the Touring Car Championship. That takes care of the action down here on the grid. Back to Mike Raymond.
Thanks, Walker. Well, of course, after the 7th round today of the Australian Touring Car Championship, let's have a look at the points table and how they are running. Of course, Jim Richards increasing his lead, now at the top of the ladder, as he was last week, 163. Second place still held by his BMW teammate, Neville Crichton, on 127. Third is Dick Johnson on 123, a little closer now to Neville Crichton. Fourth place held by Alan Jones on 113. Then behind them, Peter Brock on 108. And the next one back behind them, Robbie Francevic, adding to the points table today on 95. Any thoughts, Neil?
Well, the interesting thing there, Michael, is that Dick Johnson has already had a did-not-finish result, so he can drop his worst round as being that round and therefore drop no points away from his score of 123. However, for Richards and Crichton, their worst performances so far have been a 5th, and that means that in a car that's in what we call Class C, Neville Crichton will have to drop 15 points. So Dick Johnson is in pretty good shape in the championship so far.